Hello, and welcome to Chabot News for March 16th, 2023. My name is Jonathan, and today we will be covering the recent Norfolk Southern train derailments in Ohio and Alabama, the closing of 3 libraries at UC Berkeley, and how Audis appear to be the target for theft in one Bay Area neighborhood. We will also be looking at women's achievements in sports. All that and more coming up on Chabot News. Republicans are giving Americans a preview of what the party's 2024 race for the White House might look like. On Saturday, March 4th, former President Donald Trump spoke to a crowd of loyal supporters at CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference. Meanwhile, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who still hasn't formally declared a 2024 running, addressed a sold-out audience at the Reagan Presidential Library in California. As CNN's Christine Holmes reports, part of the message at CPAC appeared to be directed at DeSantis.
We are never going back to the party of Paul Ryan, Karl Rove, and Jeb Bush.
As the GOP primary just starts to take shape,
thank you so much.
With Republicans barreling toward a battle over the direction of the party, former President Donald Trump drawing a line in the sand.
I am your warrior. I am your justice. And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution.
The raucous reception for Trump at the Conservative Political Action Conference, which included a wide victory in the event's unscientific straw poll, demonstrates the former president's enduring support with part of the GOP base.
The popularity with Trump is ridiculous.
He's the only one that can pull this through.
And while the former president remains a clear frontrunner for the party's nomination in 2024, his third run for the White House facing fresh challenges, including ongoing criminal investigations of his handling of presidential documents and his role in the attack on the U.S. Capitol. Ahead of his speech, Trump telling reporters that he would not exit the race, even if he is indicted. On stage, painting a dire picture of the 2024 election.
This is the final battle. Either they win or we win.
More than 3 months since announcing his presidential bid, Trump advisors are taking steps to position him for a protracted campaign, building out a policy platform, including an education plan heavy on culture war proposals.
Our public schools have been taken over by the radical left maniacs.
The former president is also set to dial up his travel in the coming weeks, with an event planned in Iowa next week, just days after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis plans to visit the key early nominating state. While DeSantis isn't expected to launch a presidential bid until at least May, Trump and his team have been digging into the potential rival's record for months. One area of focus, DeSantis' past support for reforming entitlement programs.
We're not going back to people that want to destroy our great social security system, even some in our own party. I wonder who that might be.
Facing criticism from Trump as well as Democrats, the Florida governor now says Republicans won't, quote, mess with Social Security.
We're not going to mess with Social Security as Republicans. I think that that's pretty clear.
Even as Trump takes aim at DeSantis, other hopefuls seeking to draw contrast with the current leader of the pack.
If you're tired of losing, put your trust in a new generation.
We shouldn't look for larger-than-life personalities, but rather we should find power in the rooms like this one.
But one potential candidate officially stepping back from the fight.
I didn't want to have a pile-up of a bunch of people fighting. Right now, the more of them you have, the less chance you have for somebody rising up.
Thanks, Christine. Author Marianne Williamson announced she's running for president in 2024, likely setting up the first, albeit long-shot, Democratic primary challenge to President Biden. Biden has long said he intends to run for re-election, but has yet to make a formal announcement. Also on Saturday, March 4th, a second Norfolk Southern train derailed near Springfield. A little over a month after another train derailed carrying toxic materials in East Palestine. A shelter-in-place order was lifted the next day after no hazardous materials were found on the 212-car train. But one Ohio senator says he is not yet satisfied with the company's latest response. Isabel Rosales has the report.
This derailment, as all derailments, will be fully investigated and the findings will be turned over to the
Dramatic video showing the moments a Norfolk Southern train derailed in Clark County, Ohio, Saturday. The crash prompted a temporary shelter-in-place order for those living 1,000 feet from the derailment. No injuries were reported.
There was like a loud slam noise, and that's when I started noticing all the debris and all the gravel.
20 of the 212 cars derailed, with 4 tankers containing non-hazardous materials, according to Springfield Township Fire Chief Dave Mangle. Crews from Norfolk Southern, the EPA, and a Clark County hazmat team examined the crash site Saturday night.
4 tankers identified with non-hazardous materials. 2 tankers contained residual amounts of diesel exhaust fluid, and the other 2 tankers contained residual amounts of polyacrylamide water solution.
Officials determined the derailment was not in an area with a protected water source and did not pose a risk to the public water system or private wells. Meanwhile, Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says while other state officials seem to be pretty satisfied with the company's response, he is not.
I'm not entirely satisfied because I want to know there are some sort of remnants of something that might have been in those cars. Those cars were mostly empty, but I want to know if there are any contaminants sort of left in those mostly empty cars.
The latest derailment in Ohio comes as crews are still working to clear the toxic wreck of another Norfolk Southern train in East Palestine, more than 200 miles away. I'm Isabel Rosales reporting.
Thanks, Isabel. This incident, combined with the fiery February 2nd derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, which dumped a huge amount of hazardous chemicals, began a string of unfortunate derailment accidents for Norfolk Southern, as our next story shows. The National Transportation Safety Board has another Norfolk Southern derailment to deal with, and it happened the same day that Norfolk Southern CEO has been grilled by U.S. senators in connection to the recent derailment in Ohio. John Lorick reports.
Another setback for Norfolk Southern as a westbound train from Atlanta to Meridian, Mississippi, derailed in a wooded area in Calhoun County, Alabama, according to local emergency officials.
Fortunately, there was no hazardous material with this.
No injuries or road blockages were reported in Thursday's incident, according to local officials, but it comes on the heels of 2 recent derailments in Ohio, including one last month in East Palestine when toxic materials contaminated the air, water, and soil.
We're looking at all of these incidents as we look at any incident that happens and figuring out how we can become an even safer railroad.
Hours after the Alabama derailment, Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw testified in a Senate hearing, vowing to fix the situation in East Palestine.
Norfolk Southern will clean the site safely, thoroughly, and with urgency. You have my personal commitment.
But at times, Shaw was met with skepticism.
In all due respect, you sound like a politician here, Mr. Shaw.
Some Ohio residents are also a little leery.
It's great that he wants to put millions into everything, but that's not going to change how people's health is. The health is already ruined by this air and stuff. Unfortunately, that's not going to help.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
Thanks, John. The National Transportation Safety Board announced an investigation into the Alabama derailment and safety culture and practices at Norfolk Southern. On Sunday, March 5th at about 7:28 p.m., officers responded to the report of a collision involving 2 vehicles near the intersection of West Winton Avenue and Clowder Road in Hayward. Officers arrived to find both vehicles still on scene. A 50-year-old male, the solo occupant in one of the involved vehicles, was found unconscious and suffering from multiple injuries as a result of the collision. Emergency personnel responded and pronounced the man dead on the scene. Meanwhile, a 22-year-old male, the solo occupant in the other vehicle, was contacted at the scene and cooperating with the investigation. The victim's identity is not being released at this time, pending formal identification protocols by the Alameda County's Coroner's Bureau and notifications to the next of kin. It is believed alcohol impairment was a factor in this collision. This is an active investigation and Hayward's first fatal collision in 2023. Additional details will be released as they become available. It is time to take a look at sports news with our very own sports anchor, Andrea Magdaleno. What have you got for us this week?
Thank you, Jonathan. In honor of International Women's Day, which happened on March 8th, this week we have 2 entries featuring female athletes. We begin with a story about female boxers in Cuba who were only recently allowed to compete in tournaments, after decades of restrictions. CNN's Patrick Altman shows us some of the trailblazers who were making history by getting in the ring.
For years, this is how women in Cuba have boxed. Sparring in rudimentary gyms with whatever equipment they could scrounge. While men's boxing is a sport the island has long dominated, women's boxing did not bear the government's stamp of approval, meaning women boxers had to train on their own and were unable to compete in tournaments at home or abroad. It was a missed opportunity to show how formidable Cuban women can be in the ring, says trainer Namibia. From the time we were in our mother's wombs, we are fighters, she says. We are always fighting for something, to raise our kids, to help our families, to be independent. Whether it was sexism or simply the slow pace of progress they were up against, at long last, Cuba's female boxers are getting their title shot. In December, Cuban boxing officials said a new league for women would be created and that they hoped female boxers could represent the island in the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris. We took this step when we were sure, really convinced, he says, that it was the moment and we didn't have any concerns because our women would be protected. Weeks later, 12 women made history as they competed for a spot on the team. Cuba has long produced some of the world's best male boxers, but women were prevented from taking part in the sport here. Now that that glass ceiling has finally been broken, at last the moment for Cuba's women boxers has arrived for them to shine. Any doubts about the women's fighting abilities were quickly put to rest as they came out swinging. These athletes know they will still need to change some minds about whether they belong in the ring, but say at long last, attitudes are shifting. In my case, all the comments I have received have been positive, she says, that if I make an effort, I can achieve it, that Cuban women have the potential for this. It took years for this moment to arrive. And while Cuba's women boxers are only just beginning to fight, simply being in the ring means they've already won the first round. Patrick Ottman, CNN Havana.
And secondly, members of the Nicollet High School gymnastics team in Wisconsin have accomplished a huge goal. They are state champions. Now they're using their accomplishment to spread the news about women's sports. Taylor Lumpkin reports on how they're doing just that.
Some of you didn't even know we had a gymnastics team here at Nicollet.
A video posted to Instagram featuring members of the Nicollet High School gymnastics team is gaining the attention of thousands.
Very few of you even know we were going to state this weekend. We're projected to win. Sadly, this is the case for many of our women's athletic teams.
Over the weekend, the gymnastics team was crowned Division II state champions, a title the team hasn't achieved in more than 30 years.
It was like surreal, yeah.
It was so surreal, yeah. In honor of Women's History Month, team members Georgia Holton, Olivia Tyson, and Isabella Maurerman used their big win as an opportunity to talk about the importance of supporting women's athletic teams.
The platform that we have is an opportunity to make a change on a bigger scale. Women can be heard, and they should be.
Their video discussing the divide in support among boys and girls sports had been viewed by more than 18,000 people and shared nearly 300 times.
Like, I have friends at Bay who have reached out to me saying this is the same thing that happens at our school. So it's we're not the only, it's puts out the realization of we're not the only ones who have been experiencing this.
They are such strong young women, and I learn from them every day.
These girls say they're hopeful that by having conversations like these, women's athletic teams across the world will see a change.
And to see that video get so big and
people that I've barely even talked to, women from other schools, women that aren't even in high school being like, I'm so proud of you, like, I wish that I could be this brave, stuff like that. That is what has kind of inspired me to keep going.
The gymnasts hope their win will help inspire others to support women's sports. That's it for this week's News Sports. I'm Andrea Magdaleno, and now we go back to Jonathan at the desk. Jonathan, what's happening in Bay Area news?
Turning now to Bay Area news in San Jose, California, multiple Audis have been broken into in one South Bay neighborhood. Over the past few months, one of them was stolen from the owner's driveway. A man who did not want to be named, who lives in the Hammond Park neighborhood, which borders Campbell and San Jose, says thieves have broken into the 2012 Audi 3 times over the past 5 months, smashing the window in the process. He said the thieves appear to be looking for a certain model of Audi for an easy steal, because it has happened to a couple of his neighbors as well. The Audi was found an hour away in Hercules a few days later after a chase with police. 2 men were arrested after paying $1,000 each time his window was smashed. The unnamed victim says it's time for the Audi to go. On Monday, February 27th, 2023, at about 7:55 p.m., the Hayward Police Department received a call from the outside agency advising that an adult male arrived at a local medical facility and has suffered a gunshot wound. Medical personnel rendered aid, but the man succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced dead at the hospital. That same evening, officers responded to reports of a gunfire near the 3400 block of Investment Boulevard. It is believed the incident on Investment Boulevard and the death of the shooting victim are related. The victim's identity is being withheld pending formal identification protocols by the Alameda County Coroner's Bureau and notification of next of kin. There is currently no one in custody for the incident, and this investigation is active and ongoing. So anyone with information related to this homicide is asked to call Detective Purnell at 510-293-7176. Again, that's 510-293-7176. This is the second homicide in Hayward since 2023 has begun. In the North Bay, 3 libraries are set to close at UC Berkeley in order to alleviate the institution's budgetary problems. 3 campus resources, the Anthropology Library, the Mathematics Statistics Library, and the Physics Astronomy Library are set to merge their collections and staff with the campus's hub libraries and close by 2025, per the UC Berkeley's library's long-term space plan. Already, students have pushed back against the university's plan. 2 weeks ago, they organized a sit-in protest. The closures of the Anthropology's library, Evans Hall, one of the most hated buildings on campus, which houses the math library, is slated for demolition. Though it's still unclear what plans are in store for the Anthropology and Physics library spaces. School representatives did not immediately answer whether library staffing will be cut, how the vacant spaces will be used, or when the libraries will be officially closed. The school's new news department wrote that the new plan will be implemented in 2023. As far as we know, dementia isn't going anywhere anytime soon. But what if I told you you could reduce the effects of dementia on the brain by your dieting choices? Dementia affects 55 million people around the world, but a new study indicates that a Mediterranean diet, which consists of rich in seafood and plant-based foods, had up to a 23% lower risk of dementia than those who had a lower adherence to the diet. The latest research involved 60,000 people who were part of the UK Biobank study and tracked for a period of just over 9 years. During the study period, there were 882 cases of dementia among the group. The individuals were between the ages of 40 and 69 years of age and were white, British, or Irish. How closely they followed the Mediterranean diet was addressed using 2 different questionnaires that have been widely used in prior studies on the diet. The researchers said this way of eating can prevent cognitive decline and help the heart, reduce diabetes, prevent bone loss, encourage weight loss, and more. A study published on March 8th revealed people who consumed foods from the Mediterranean and brain-focused MIND diets had fewer of the hallmark signs of Alzheimer's, which is a form of dementia. The MIND diet, short for Mediterranean Diet Intervention for Intervention for neurodegenerative delay, focuses on plant-based cookings, and majority of each meal should be fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans and seeds, along with a few nuts. There's a few heavy emphasis on extra virgin olive oil. Butter and other fats are consumed rarely, if at all. Sweets and goods made for refined sugar or flour are rare, and meats can make a rare appearance, but usually only to flavor a dish. Instead, meals may include eggs, dairy, and poultry, but in much smaller portions than in traditional Western diets. However, fish, which is full of brain-boosting omega-3s, is a staple. A lucky group of Milford middle schoolers took the stage this past weekend with a music legend who has graced some of the world's biggest stages and played with even bigger names. From the Trans-Siberian Orchestra to Celine Dion, that's right folks, we're talking about Mark Wood. Saturday night, Mark played on stage at the Pearson Auditorium alongside Milford students. Wood comes from Milford as part of his Electrify Your Symphony tour. The tour's goal is to revitalize music programs all across the nation. I've played with Eddie Van Halen. I've worked with Billy Joel. And what I want to share with the music programs is instinct and passion, and unpredictability is the power, said Wood. With Wood making dozens of school stops a year, he makes sure each student gets the most out of his 2-day workshop. We have to develop these kids at a much more accelerated pace because they're moving at a much faster pace, Wood said. His 2-day workshop in Milford will end with an already sold-out concert this past weekend. But for Wood, it's about much more than taking music from sheet to show. It's about showing kids like Violet Rumford that their potential and energy. It's awesome. I feel I've really come out of my shell today, said Violet. Today, there was a kid in the back who was a little scared. And when you see that kid open up and blossom, it's emotional. But when you see the blossom, I say, that's the ticket. That is what we need to do, added Wood. And honestly, isn't that what education should all be about? That's all for Chabot News this week. Thanks to all the students and staff in the Mass Communications Department here at Chabot College for making this production possible. You can watch us anytime online at youtube.com/Chabot TV. Stay tuned to KCTH Channel 27 for more Chabot TV.